Yeah, well, today for another weekly vlog, and I've been a bit lazy with making them because, like, in my mind, I was like, if I do it weekly, then I have a lot of time to prepare for them, and I can, talk about like a very specific subject or whatever. Not even like a specific subject, but I can pick like the best thing to talk about that came to me during my week. But what ends up happening usually is I just do it the last day, whatever. But so I wanted to talk about today is the fact that I actually got a job. Like it's quite surprising actually. Expected to get a job so early. So I started looking for a job in October, in the beginning of October, because that was when I passed my driving license. What I did actually, I did want to focus on like two things, do both of them at the same time, somewhat. But because of my driving anxiety, I literally just couldn't like it took up so much of my energy to just drive and deal with the emotions. Or like that, I literally like couldn't even spend time to look for a job in the meantime. And yeah, I think in hindsight it was a good idea because looking for a job is quite a draining process. Um, and you also have to prepare yourself for like the interviews and whatnot. So I started in October, and I actually got it on Tuesday, not so in the beginning of this week. So that took like in total like 45 days, I'd say, to which is really fast. And for that I have to thank the fact that I have a fairly marketable degree. Like I didn't realize to what extent, but so I study mathematics, and yeah, it's obviously way easier to find a job in that field than a lot of degrees. So I'm quite grateful that I picked a degree that is marketable. And I guess that is a good subject. I didn't plan to talk about that, but that's one of a good subject. So uh, the whole idea of choosing, what to say, um, going for your passion is, I think it comes from a good intention. And the intention is simply that, of course, if you're going to spend your entire life devoting to a job that you don't want to do something that makes you miserable or that doesn't interest you or that just becomes a grind or whatever. You want something that excites you and interests you at least. And that's the good intention, right? Like you don't want to live a miserable life, of course. And it might sound obvious when I say it out loud, but like it's quite surprising how much we tend to choose things that don't make us happy, and we tend to choose misery because it's so normalized, right? Like people are so used to things being bad and disappointing and not good that they just settle into this state of this mindset that it's mindset of normalized misery or normalized discontentment, that they just start accepting things, that they just start laying down basically and being okay with things that are not so great and they don't enjoy so much. So I think that's the intention behind the whole idea of going for your passion. But I think it's really misguided in many ways. The first one is what I would call like the architect fallacy. So it's the idea that plans, like very rigid plans, especially when they're really far in the future, and especially when you're ignorant, when you make them when you're ignorant, they're really bad idea. So the architect fallacy is because the idea is that an architect he tries to create a blueprint of the house. He tries to plan everything because he has to, right? Because otherwise the house will collapse and whatever. And then he actually gets people to work on the thing. The thing is that in reality, most things don't work this way. Like you don't first figure out a blueprint of your mind. Like you don't figure out like the blueprint of your life, and then you execute it for the rest of your life. That's not how it works. Right? Like life is way too crazy and unpredictable and full of surprises, good or bad. You really can't plan life this way, and I think it's really bad idea to plan your job this way as well because yeah, as I said, like when too predictable, you might change in unexpected ways. You might find new interests, and you might find that all things don't interest you as much. It's that kind of thing. Right? Like it's a very dangerous because of that reason. The whole passion thing, and also like it assumes that it's just possible for you to know in advance what the passion is, even though like you might enjoy something now, but like maybe in the future you won't. maybe you won't enjoy doing it as a job because it's very different. Like, a lot of people enjoy like music or art, but would they really enjoy doing it like 8 hours a day for the rest of their life? Like, it's really a lot of work, and there are going to be many ups and downs, of course. But of course, all jobs have that. But when it's something you like, it can be especially like discouraging, like to see the relationship change, right? Like the going from really enjoying it and doing it because you want to sort of becoming a drag. I don't know. It's a factor in my opinion. And the whole passion thing, I think it's very. There's a book called "So Good They Can't Ignore You" by I don't remember the author, but it's about the passion hypothesis as he calls it. And one of the point he makes is that when you are really focused on your passion, you actually become very sensitive to the things that you don't like about it. So, like, what he basically observes that people who chase their passion, they tend to really like up interest and career, right? And as a result, they don't really develop skills or like consistency, and they never go through like the really difficult phase. The fact that when you do things as a beginner, they tend to suck, and things can get really hard, like not really enjoyable. I think it's true for like most things in life. Like most things really suck as a beginner. Like drawing is especially true. You don't make anything that's good when you're new to drawing. That's simply how it is. And because the taste between your the gap between your taste and your skills is so huge. And it's also true for like I don't know physical exercise, I guess. Somewhat, I guess. But like I'm just thinking, for example, running at first it's not enjoyable, but it can be if you develop the habit. But at the same time, exercising can be enjoyable because you make a lot of progress if you stick to it in the first years. But yeah, but I think in general things tend to suck as a beginner, or like having to implement the habits and having to go through like the taste gap in creative work, or having to go through like the learning the unsexy part of the field. For example, if you want to do basketball, right, you're probably gonna spend the first month just, or probably like the first years even, just working on your physical condition because you know as much as basketball skills is important, if you get tired after like 15 minutes, then you're not really a useful player. Like if you can't run for long, then you just become like someone who can get a lot of points for 15 minutes, but then you just get out. That's I guess in a way that can be good, but like it's probably you could probably just improve a lot faster by on a physical condition. Right? So the beginning is very fun, and when you are very sensitive to things that you don't like, you tend to switch, and you don't really go through like the breakaway point, the breakthrough point where things get really enjoyable. Right? With drawing, like once you can make some things that are, once you can draw things that are, somewhat uh, pleasing to the eye, whatever, like then drawing becomes really interesting. Right? You can start playing around with it. You don't have to like be so rigid with what you draw and so on, and it can be really enjoyable. But the beginning is not fun. That's something the passion hypothesis misses. And there's many things that are not great about passion. It's also like this fantasy of like that you see in society about like the one perfect thing, right? Like the one perfect job or the one perfect relationship or the one perfect house or the one perfect place, the one perfect destination. Like I think it's really a myth, and it's really a toxic myth to believe that there's such a thing as a perfect element of your life, much not much less a perfect life, right? Because the thing that it's really obvious when you think about it, but the thing that this misses is the fact that the quote unquote perfect thing, by virtue of it being such a big part of your life, will also be the source of most of your frustration. Like your perfect job, because you spend so much time in your job, or like let's say 35 to 40 hours a week, it will also be one of the biggest sources of frustration in your life. Your perfect relationship is the same because you spend so much time with your partner, right? And so on and so forth. And of course, there's always like a cost associated to them. Monetary cost is a huge one, of course, but at the end of the day, all monetary cost is a time cost. That's more fundamental. And so, like that perfect house, like that perfect car, whatever, like whatever you want, it's got like an opportunity cost. It's got a time cost to it. You need to work for it, and I think it's very naive to think that that everything is a perfect thing. It's a very toxic mentality, and it's again, it makes you very sensitive to things that you don't like about it, right? So what is the alternative then to passion? Well, I'm still young, so I don't have that much like perspective on life, but I think the key is to focus on like things that are like more, how to say, that last more, that are more that last more in you than things that are way more like how to say. Let me just try to think about it for a moment. I think it's about investing in things that are more durable inside you, such as your skills, your values, and your interests. I think it's really what you should invest in rather than thinking about a specific career, because again, like, careers are not just defined by you. Like, just because you want something doesn't mean you really get it, and it's also shaped by like the financial state of the world, right, and the job market and so on, and your opportunities, your network. It's shaped by a lot of things, and those things are out of your control. So I think it can be very risky to like define your life according to your career, but what you can focus on is focusing on things that you can control, such as developing skills, developing things, focusing on your interests. Um, you know, I prefer the word interest to like, plural S, rather than passion, because passion is too loaded of a word, right? And also like interest doesn't have the whole thing where you are sensitive to things you don't like. I feel like um, interest has this much more realistic tone to it, right? Like, oh, I'm interested in movies and traveling and learning about cultures and learning about crystals. I guess something I found pretty cool lately, and that just feels way more realistic, right? That like you doesn't feel like you are fused with the thing as much, right? And it just feels a lot more healthy to think about interest rather than passion. But I don't know, maybe at the same time, maybe someone could criticize that it's not as committed, not as focused, right? Maybe a bit too uh, uncommitted, like hobby, trying to hop through interests and hobbies and that kind of stuff. But I think it makes you a more stable person for sure. Like to simply know who you are, like to simply develop skills and to know who you are and what you want out of life, because you might not be able to have the job that you want in your current situation, but what you can do is that you can certainly express certain values and focus on certain values and go towards a job that like matches those values. And so in my case, well, if I want to go back to my case, I don't know, the job I have right now, I wouldn't say that. Again, it's a term I don't like, but I'm going to use it anyway. It wouldn't be like my perfect job, but like at the same time, I don't really expect this to be like my permanent job. Like I just can't see myself being an employee for the rest of my life, and I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do, but I certainly know things that interest me, and I certainly know my values and what I want out of life, and I certainly have skills. So I think I think I'm like prepared, but like in a not in a plan type of way, but more like in a improvising improvise improvising it. Oh my god, I can't pronounce this word. I'm ready to improvise. Like I think it's more about. I think navigating through life is more about being able to improvise and learn from other people than it is about forming very rigid plans. And I think it's very dangerous to stick to rigid plans because life is just way too unpredictable, and um, you just want to build things that are solid, but like that stick with you. Like not things that are dependent on the external world, as a specific job or career. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about more subjects, but I guess I don't really have time. I also kind of improvised the whole thing about career, so don't take this stuff too seriously, right? Like this is not meant to be career advice. This is simply my perspective. And a huge reason why navigating life is so hard is because you're always ignorant. Like I really wish someone told me this, but it's just a lesson I had to learn from reading and watching videos. So obvious when you say it out loud, but here it is, You start life and not knowing yourself, not knowing anything, in fact. Start life with nothing. And then you somehow must learn about yourself and about the world and about society as you live. But you don't magically reach a point where you know everything. Like, obviously impossible. So ignorance is a complete and utter certainty. You will always be ignorant. You will always have things you don't know. There will always be unknown variables. This is a huge reason why you can't navigate life with a rigid map, with a rigid plan. But I guess a map is a good analogy. Like, because life changes, life changes as you live through it. Like, it both literally changes and it also changes in the way that you perceive it because you get more information about it, you get more understanding about it, and so on. You get more understanding about yourself. Um, I think like 5 years ago, I would have probably a very different outlook on careers because I didn't know myself. Now I know myself a bit more, but still many things I don't understand about myself. Still many things I'm trying to work through. Right? So, but yeah, it's really obvious, right, when you say it out loud that you will always be ignorant about things in life, but like people live as if it wasn't the case. Like people live as if life was just fully known, like fully observable, just never changing, just a static environment. But it couldn't be further away from the truth. Like life is just way too unpredictable to have anything um, such as a plan be able to work. Like it simply doesn't work. And it might be even worse than not working well, right? Like there's a sense in which there are some situations where I counter this. There's a sense in which having literally no plan might literally be a better idea than having a plan. Because a plan makes you really rigid, but like a just like an idea can make you rigid and try to fit the world to your idea rather than fitting your idea rather than trying to make the world fit to your idea rather than fit your ideas to the world. Um like having a plan can actually be worse than having no plan. But I guess I don't really have a concrete example right now, but like oh just you know the way most people go about like getting happiness is really toxic in my opinion. And so like the whole idea of chasing happiness as a goal in general, like it's clearly a plan in many people's lives, but I think it's quite toxic because this whole obsession with happiness once again is an example of where you become very sensitive to the things you don't like. And as a result, what happens a lot of the time is that people just suppress, like they just suppress negative emotions and things they don't like about their life instead of, building positive things and accepting whatever comes. And yeah, it's plans are quite dangerous. In my experience, they don't really work, so I stay away from plans. But why I'm also quite young, so like you're listening to someone who wouldn't have suffered from his advice. I guess that's quite an important point to make. Yeah. Um, sometimes people give advice. And that's literally what I'm doing right now. Sometimes people give advice, and they're in such a state that they wouldn't suffer from the consequences of their advice being wrong. So, like, for example, I'm young and I'm giving life advice, but really, you shouldn't take this as life advice. You should take this as me just sharing what I think. This is the point of my vlogs, just sharing what I think. Um, but another example would be like, like those people who are already financially successful and they tell you how to be financially successful. They this type of advice is just still a really bad idea to listen to them usually because people rarely understand why they are successful. And sometimes they are right. Sometimes people are very good at understanding themselves, but a lot of success is just straight up random luck sometimes. And you know, there's a sense in which luck is about being able to expose yourself to things, right? But like, there's also a lot of people who just get successful, like no no good reason. They just get lucky and game the system. And listening to those people is might actually be worse than not listening to anyone actually. So I'm not sure why I started talking about this, but like oh yeah, the fact that The people who give advice, they might not suffer from the advice being wrong. Yeah, this is definitely something to keep track of when you listen to people, or like someone, someone like uh, when someone gives you the suggestion of taking a risk, or often taking a risk, what they suggest is for you not to take risks, but for you to play safe. And these people will never have to live your own life. Or like, this is the whole thing about life advice in general, is that the people who give life advice to you, they will never have to suffer the consequences of the bad advice if the advice is bad. And this is really problematic, right? Because it's your life. It's not their life. It's your life. Like, only you have to live through the consequences of it. So yeah, it's really about knowing yourself, right? And thinking about yourself. But most things are easier said than done. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.